How can you gather everything in an automated way, which is not manual or not cumbersome, or maybe even manual error prone in that sense. So you need tools that will be the backbone there, so that you have knowledge and overall insights.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Carlos Campabadal. I'm an outreach specialist and faculty here at the Department of Grain Science and Industry at Kansas State University, where I work in the areas of grain storage and feed manufacturing at the International Grains Program Institute that we call IGP. Today is my first time being here a host in this podcast, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And today we will have Lynn Verstrepen, that she works for BESTMIX. And Lynn, welcome very much here for joining us. And this the Feed Science podcast. If you please can just introduce ourselves and we could hit it off.
Thank you. So I'm Lynn Verstrepen, was a good pronunciation of my last name. And maybe a secret, it's also my first time doing a podcast, so pretty excited. I work at BestMix Software and I lead there the product management department. I have a bioengineering degree in environmental technology, and I've spent until now more than 12 years working with software for the feed and the food industry. And I talk a lot with customers, so I have a ton of know-how of the feed and the food businesses, how they work, and what kind of challenges they encounter. And that's what we do at BestMix Software. We make them software that help those customers to tackle these challenges. So pretty excited in doing this. And also the topic of today, the challenge of raw material sourcing, is something that we heavily invest in. So happy to dive in and explore how software in general can be a game changer in this area.
Thank you very much for joining us, and also with with the time differences here in the central Kansas. We're here in the U.S. Central in the morning, and I know you're there in the afternoon back in Belgium. And as we said, both first time for us here being part of the Feed Science podcast, and in this podcast, we love to hear about all the different topics related to our industry, and like you said, the market volatility related to the feed ingredients, raw material is something that is very important. I throughout my work, and as you know me, I come from Costa Rica, and my family actually is involved in the feed production business on it's integrated and commercial, and we actually make pet food too. So I encountered that volatility on I'm not gonna say day to day because I'm not part of the business day to day, but with my cousin that runs the company, my father, and other people, I'm kind of involved a little bit into it. So we understand how it is. And so from your perspective, I mean, if we go back, based you said you have more than 12 years of experience. Can you relate us a little bit of how you have seen compared to previous years? And then we know that everybody has a saying related to COVID, how COVID changes a lot of the life, but there's been other factors that have caused this market volatility. So you can share a little bit more your view into it, and then we could dive in a little bit more and what things we need to keep in mind to kind of offset this issue, especially for feed producers.
Maybe something to mention first is, despite the challenges that we see here, I think there's still a great growth potential. So it's not all negative, of course. But in my opinion, companies should be aware of the environments that they are operating in. And we have an environment that contains of political challenges, but also economical, ecological, even, and sustainability, a big trend, social factors also that influence that environment. And I think that is one of the most important things that you should be aware of if you want to be strategic as a company. I always say you can only win a battle if you know yourself, but also your enemy. And this type of environment is a kind of enemy. You need to know what is behind or what can happen. So if you look, for example, to the past, we have seen that farmers have a constant pressure to become as efficient as possible, but also feed producers, they need to deliver feed at the best prices. So a lot of challenge there, and you had already the example of COVID. It's maybe a good or a bad example, depending on how you want to call it. But this resulted really in a kind of cascading disruptions in the supply chain with high prices, but a trend that we still see. For example, we have other events like the Russian invasion in Ukraine. We have droughts in Europe. Um, Trade embargoes, for example, that creates similar type of events in the supply chain, I would say. And you could say, okay, maybe production is slowly returning to normal, but what is normal? If I look to it, instability is still there. And this is worldwide. We have disruption in the supply chain and increases in prices. And in my opinion, this will not go away. There will always be like one of kind of trigger that will set this again. So if you then look to that market and you have prices which are inconsistent for raw materials and feed additives, we know that profitability takes a hit. And what happens then is that you see that sometimes the supply chain slows down, but then companies can't deliver anymore what they are promising. And then we don't have happy customers anymore. That's also something that we want or don't want. And to fix this, what we see is, or what I sometimes see at customers, they try to quickly have possibility or a solution for it. But then maybe you're buying materials that you don't really need, or it's a quick fix, but it's not a long term fix. So in the end, you have an overall effect which is not in a positive balance. Um, so this kind of sourcing is an issue that I see and being caused in the market. But it's not only that. If you look to fluctuations in these industries, you also see, for example, in the labor shortage an issue, in the sense of factories are closing down or people are leaving their jobs and going different industries. So it's not that easy to have skilled personnel anymore. So that's also a kind of trigger that we see. So not that easy to find a solution there. For example, farming has had a hard time finding enough workers for a while now, and the pandemic even made it worse. So maybe it's something that you recognize as well from your own situation. And what I see is that then companies try to stick with the same suppliers because they know them, they are trustworthy, but always sticking to the same supplier is also not something that you want. And because sometimes another supplier has other benefits. So it's worth sometimes making that change, but then changing in a volatile environment is not that an easy choice. So we see like a difficult balance somewhere sometimes. Do you stay what you know, or do you go for something that you don't know, but then maybe risk that you don't have the materials that you need? So it's a difficult puzzle, I would say. And I see a real struggle there.
I agree 100% with everything that you're mentioning. I mean, we see it here. I mean, just going back a little bit on the environmental factors, here in Kansas, as some people know, is the number one producer of hard red winter wheat, which is the number one wheat type that is growing here in the United States, that used to produce wheat, bread, and those type of flowers that need rising. And we coming out of a 3-year drought, and that affects a lot because even that is intended for human consumption, all the wheat millings that are used for different animal diets takes a hit too. And some in some places also they use wheat as a feed ingredient, as a raw material. And that place, even in my own local market, you could actually definitely see it. And so it's very important, all those factors you mentioned. And definitely we're definitely seeing a labor shortage. And as you see, companies is very difficult to actually overcome this. I mean, you have to think very creative on how to do things, automate your process, and then of course different tools like that you guys work in, softwares that could help you do be more efficient and kind of take that I'm gonna call it manual labor thinking to overcome some of those calculations and decisions that you need to make on a day to day. Putting my hat as here in the academic institution that I work, Kansas State University, our department is the only one that gets students with a 4 year degree in feed science, and we and milling and baking science too. But we see that the industry keeps asking for students to help get that workforce going, and we cannot recruit enough students, and they're just very difficult. Like you said, people go to different areas, they see people leaving on the one side of the workforce, and then we cannot get people to study to get into that workforce. We're in a very changing world, but as you said, it's always like that. And this is not about me, but one thing that I wanted to kind of like check with you, or ask you, to be honest, on your comment is, you see probably on your day to day a lot of companies having a struggle and kind of like to overcome this traditional way of doing things. So, what do you think about that? And what do you think could be some of those different things that companies can do to overcome all this market volatility, shortage, and also kind of comment on shortage of workforce?
I think it is just a big challenge in the sense of sometimes, for example, you think, there's a possibility of working with alternative ingredients, for example, waste streams. Waste streams can be used to feed animals as well, and it can save money, but it's not that easy. How will you replace it? And what kind of alternative will you incorporate then? And how would you do it? And what's the effect on this recipe? And what's the effect on the entire facility, for example? So it's a very complex thing. And for me, that's one of the characteristics of it. So if you look to the characteristics of the current industry, it's complex, but at the same time, there's something else. If you look to maintaining stability and continuity, I would say it's difficult not only because it's complex, but the fluctuations are also often rapid and extreme. So three characteristics that makes it almost mission impossible via a traditional method where you're going to do it based upon experience, or yeah, for a particular case, because yeah, it's complex, it's rapid, it's extreme, so it's like very crucial that you do a correct decision, but it needs to be within a limited time that you do it. So, yeah, a quick judgment based on past experience is not efficient. I always compare it with and people that I know, me, they will say she's there again with her example. But I compare it with like a spider's web. If you navigate in this principle, it's like pulling on one thread, and it may seem beneficial for that one particular aspect that you're looking into it. But if you pull on one thread of a spider, the other ones are also moving, and sometimes they are not moving in a good direction. So looking to this puzzle is really something that you need to do from overall insights, and not on a particular case, because maybe you will do something that will impact that smaller part in a very good and beneficial way, but the overall effect is maybe not that what you want. And because you want to optimize your entire production facility, or even the different sites across the country that you want to make sure that you do. So a traditional method then is not really handy. Because yeah, it's then based upon past experience, and it's not really like the one single source of truth where you see the impacts and the pros and the cons of everything. And what I also noticed that it's complex in the sense that there's a lot of data, but most often the data is also in different systems. So how can you make an accurate decision if you don't have all your data with you? You don't have a single source of truth in a traditional method. And that also slows down good decision making.
Well, let's touch base here a little bit, maybe more on the data, because you triggered something that kind of hit my mind a little bit. And we're in the world right now where big data is very important, and sometimes this is a personal opinion. I believe that in the overall, I think in the farming in some sectors in the world is being used more than before. But in the feed industry, I believe that we struggle a little bit. So can you comment a little bit, because I know that in your company you guys develop different type of softwares to meet utilize this data. So can before we go into that labor shortage and then connect with that, will you mention a little bit how overall the decision making with the collection of data in this software helps you to kind of do the best decisions that you could do in your company. And I will put in an example that I see day to day in different parts of the world, that the procurement side makes a decision on least cost formulation. They might see the markets, of course. Then you got the formulation that also tries to formulate based on the ingredients that you have available, trying to match all the different specifications of your formula. And then you have the feed miller, and I put my hat as a feed miller based on my experience that, those ingredients that you get might not be the best to, for example, get a good quality pellet. But how that all that different areas with all the big data you could collect help you make better decisions for your company.
Yeah, if you take that example, for example, if you have it's a pretty concrete example. Imagine that you have a certain problem with certain ingredients. The thing is that if you don't have all the data with you, meaning that if that ingredient is used in X amount of recipes at X amount of production sites, you will not be able to judge correctly what you need to do with it, because it could be that if you replace ingredient with another ingredient in a certain formula, maybe that's not beneficial to do that in every single recipe. So what you need then to be able to make that good call is you need your information from your ERP system, meaning, okay, what kind of recipes, what kind of compound feed am I going to produce this week or even next week if the logistical issue is for longer term. What's the forecast of these formulas? How much do I still have of in stock of my other ingredients? That also influences the decision. Do I have contract information, ingredients on contract coming next week or this week? And this entire puzzle of data you need to centralize, because then software can, in a click, for example, be your backbone and say, okay, you want to do this. This ingredient is maximum this amount available. Let's see the effect. But you already see how much data that I'm listening up or listing up. It's a lot. And without having everything, you will be comparing like apples with pears. If you don't have everything there, then you don't have a good insight. So, for me, without software, this is almost mission impossible. How can you gather everything in an automated way, which is not manual or not cumbersome, or maybe even manual error prone in that sense? So you need tools that will be the backbone there, so that you have knowledge and overall insights. It's almost, if you would compare it with the army, it's your number one in your arsenal that you need to have to deal with price swings and limited availability of raw materials. So, yeah, for me, that's the biggest change or the biggest difference with the traditional methods. Really having a one solution that gathers everything to do decision making in a very strategic way and data driven way. Data confidence is really important.
And that's where what I wanted to go about data confidence, because sometimes when you think about it, it is like, how can you be sure that the data you're collecting or the things you're doing are, I mean, I'm gonna put it in simple terms, the real information that you need to collect in order to make that informed decision to become more efficient in what you do. And I think this applies overall, not just in the feed industry or pet food industry. I mean, just overall. And I see some other industries that are very strong into it, but I do believe that the feed industry, I mean, overall around the world should look more into it. I mean, so from your perspective, um, I know you're based in Europe, so I wanted to kind of like ask you part that I'm a little bit curious. How do you see this transition overall in Europe from a feed livestock perspective, and then also on the pet food? And I did separate them because at least here in the Americas, the whole continent, and Southeast Asia, North Africa, that I'm very involved, you still see a separation. Having pet food a little bit more specific, a little bit more data driven compared to just regular livestock, swine, poultry, dairy feeds.
I think, yeah, especially the customers that I'm working with, they are really data driven companies. I think that's a huge shift that we make. And maybe, okay, maybe pet food is already a bit longer like that. But I think that's maybe just because the origin is different. I think pet food is more like food. The industry is also marketing, and that's already data driven,
Yeah.
right? Marketing, statistics, and analytics. So they come from a different angle. So I think those type of companies are already a bit more data driven in the sense of gathering data and stuff like that. But it's just then also taking it to the level of production. But yeah, already from the beginning of my career, in fact, I see data driven decisions, and of course, it's getting more importance, or that's increasing, because without having those data sets at your fingertips, I would say, the decision making becomes harder because the environment around it is not that stable anymore. And whilst before you could trust, okay, it will be like this, you can't do that anymore. You can't say tomorrow will be like that. And that's a different type of atmosphere that we are in. So I believe it's crucial to have really one main source of truth for all your data. Because if you look to a feed producing company, it starts already from the customer request phase, right? You go then to product development, order entry, planning, getting your raw materials, producing, up to finishing and final product delivery. You can't optimize if you don't look to that full circle. So there again, it's looking from one solution, from one base system, to gather all the data, because yeah, every step is important and certain steps influence each other. So there you see that also again coming back. So I think it's really important to mention and talk about this. Because basically, if you look to software, it can be the source of truth in these type of decisions. And in today's fast changing world, I always call it, it's a kind of a foundation that you need to be strong and resilient, not to replace the core job of people, but to allow you to focus on your core job, and that the software is there as a backbone and that supports you in your decision making.
Oh no, I absolutely I agree. While you were talking, I was just kind of remembering how years ago, and there's still some places around the world that do that. That you have this person that maybe founded the company, is about to retire or past retirement, who makes a lot of decisions, maybe informed based on looking, let's say, on purchasing based on the market, or formulation based on what that person believes is the best. But in some
Hmm.
ways, they always feel that it's like a gut feeling that they have,
Yeah.
and that knowledge is not usually well transmitted as the next generations take over, especially in a family-based company. And
Yeah.
even if you go more into a public trade company, or somebody that is managed as family company, managed separately, that the whole decisions are just have to come from somewhere.
Hmm.
And that's why I think everything that you said is key, and we have to kind of always look more into the data. So being said that, you know that, as you mentioned, we have very a lot of unpredictable fluctuations. I mean, who could have guessed, for example, a year and a half ago, that the Russia was going to invade Ukraine, and that affected the market of corn, wheat, and sunflowers, and of course other ingredients too, and the whole transit of those ingredients. And for example, when droughts, South America that faced some parts of it with drought last year, that overall on the feed ingredient, on the major components, always has those fluctuations.
Hmm.
So being said that what you mentioned on the software, what specific features can empower that formulation and or purchasing managers to make those informed decisions, to swift and make those informed decisions, to overset or offset any type of unpredictable fluctuations.
In my eyes, it's playing a key role in addressing the challenges, and I'm thinking of a few scenarios.
Yeah.
um I'm gonna talk about my experience at BESTMIX, of
Oh,
course,
great.
because that's
Yeah,
what I know.
absolutely.
um so the first scenario that I'm talking or thinking about is that it's like I said already, like allocating ingredients efficiently. So if you have software that empowers your formulation and your purchase managers with tools that allow you to allocate ingredients at the right time, at the right place, at the right price, then regardless if there is market volatility, you will still be strategic and you will still have benefits in doing that. So if you have a tool like that that helps you in evaluating buying opportunities and reacting when there is a logistical challenge, that's already one area where it can unburden as a feature. Um, Maybe a second thing that I'm thinking of is that it's not only reactive, it's also strategic. It can be your partner in crime, let's say, by monitoring market dynamics. Not that I'm promoting AI and stuff like that, but it really like as a backbone, and AI has, of course, its benefits as well. But what I mean is that it can be really your supporting partner in monitoring the dynamics and identifying the risks and opportunities associated with price fluctuations. Because that's also something that is typical for me. When there is a challenge, for me, a challenge is not only negative, there's also an opportunity behind it. So it depends how you look to it, from which angle that you're looking to it. So if you then use software to turn it to in a benefit, then maybe you have opportunities that you didn't have before. And that's where software comes into place. It can help you to minimize the risks, but also in maximizing the gains that you can have from it. So I think that's also something that I want to share or give as feedback. Um, and maybe, yeah, being ahead of the market, I would also say that's again that stepping away from the reactive mode and being proactive, forward thinking, allowing companies to forecast trends and plan months ahead to secure the supply chain and the procurement strategy that you want to do there. Um, yeah, the accurate data or the single source of truth, that's also already something that we talked about.
Yeah.
Maybe another interesting one, because maybe that's not directly linked to a volatile market, but for me it's related. Sustainability, that's also a big trend. And if you look to it, it's also a disruptor in a way because it disrupts the way we handle today. 10 years ago, we would not take the same actions as now this trend or this challenge is imposing on us. So that's also a very nice one. I don't know if you encountered this already at your family.
Yes, absolutely. Sustainability is something very important for the market, for the consumers, and I will tell you that a little bit from the U.S. farmer perspective, on the especially the soybean side,
Hmm.
that they have kind of taken a little bit the lead in working with that, and they're trying to do get some ways. They have a specific system that no need to go into details, but that they have shown how their farming practices and the a little bit part, and I'm not going to say complete, but part of that supply chain has shown sustainability, and that has helped us at least from the people that we're in the as the end user. Um, in Costa Rica and a lot of places here in the upper part of Latin America, we buy U.S. soybeans or soybean meal as the main protein source.
Hmm.
So having
Yeah,
that certificates of sustainability that enables you to put a label on your feed,
yeah, can imagine.
livestock being pet food, is a benefit, and there's different things on that is a total new I think another feed science podcast topic, because I think it's very important, but you could definitely see that. So we have kind of benefited from that perspective, but because it's very market driven, and I will say, for example, that when you think about the livestock market in almost the majority of countries is very, and maybe in Europe I'm not that knowledgeable, it might be different, but in the Southeast Asia, North Africa, Latin America, here in the US, is very regional, but the pet food is not.
Yeah.
I mean, you go any supermarket, let's say Mexico, for example, and you're gonna find pet food from the U.S., Canada, local, Central America, Europe. I mean, it just, and that's a trend because there's different things going on with the different options that you get. So sustainability plays a big role in order if you want to get ahead of that, like you said, being proactive. And I like the word proactive a lot, and I think that's key for our industry. I think definitely sustainability is a big thing, and here at the university we're trying to push it more. Definitely from
Yeah.
a processing perspective, of course, but understanding the consumer. So I know that in the Europe industry, European industry is something very big. Can you comment based on that? How do you see that trend in terms of sustainability? Is there a way that, for example, the feed producers, or let's talk about pet food, are the consumers requesting a specific certification or proof that the ingredients, the process, the transportation is all sustainable? Because I'm always curious how those aspects all are handled.
It's really different country per country, and even also differences between feed and pet food. So we, as a software house, we already like years making changes in our software to allow to take into account sustainability, because we felt, okay, this is something where we need to be proactive on, and we are not waiting until customers or the industry needs it. So what we did already is pretty quickly. We incorporated it as a third pillar in formulation. So not only the quality side and the cost side, but also the environmental side. And what we see is that, for example, in the feed industry, there's like a quick acceptation in trying these methods and seeing, okay, when I'm formulating, what's then the effect on sustainability? And then in the pet food industry, there is a bit of a delay, I would say, because there we are still lacking a standardized
Okay.
database. Because if you look to LCA data, you need to compare again apples with apples and not apples with pears. And the feed industry already has more steps there. They have already the GFLI database, which is a globally accepted standard data set. But in the pet food, that doesn't exist yet. So there, yeah, we still see a bit of struggle, and we see a kind of waiting behavior in the sense, okay, is it the industry that takes action, or is it legislation that will push it? So there it's still a bit of a kind of waiting game and seeing, okay, who will do what. But yeah, like you say, 100% sure we will move towards a situation that we will need to take this into account. But very challenging, and nice to see how this also evolves. And we always do these kind of sessions and also partnering sessions with customers about this. And I see this evolving in a very nice way. But at the same time, also a pressure, of course, that comes from law and from the market. So again, a challenge, eh? A kind of disruptor, but something that can bring benefits as well.
With its advanced industry-specific capabilities, BESTMIX Software empowers nutritionalists and formulators to optimize material allocation, manage recipes, and ensure data confidence for informed decision-making. By providing a comprehensive solution that integrates real-time data and strategic planning tools, BESTMIX enables you to do the job efficiently and precisely. Focus on your core job and let BESTMIX do the rest.
I agree. I mean, it is a challenge, but I like what you said, that is very interesting, and see how it evolves, because it's like the overall market. It fluctuates, in a different
Yes,
way, but
definitely.
I like to see it because, as new trends come in, and more science brings more information, and of course, like you said, politics also plays into it. But
Yeah.
the consumers, I mean, sometimes we underestimate consumers, and but the consumers, at the end of the day, they always say the customer always has the right, the is always right. But it is something that I think, for our current generation and the future generations, it's something exciting to work within, especially that there's nothing that has been established for many years, and we could have a saying into it. So I definitely agree with that. But very interesting.
And it's not an or situation, right? It's not that I'm against meat or whatever, but I do believe in balance. It's about balancing it. And the fact that we are a bit more aware of what we're doing is beneficial for everybody, for everybody that lives on the planet and for the planet itself. And also maybe it's because of my background as an environmental engineer that I like this topic. But I see also the beautiful aspect of it, that we put focus on this.
No, it's definitely a balance is very important, and that you said something that on your background being a bioenvironmental engineering, and let's go into it because I think maybe at the beginning we didn't cover too much, but um, how do you end up like working in this area? Because I'm always curious, honest. I came, I'll put my example. I'm actually a mechanical engineer and ended up working in family business and then in the industry for a while before I decided to go to grad school and move into agriculture engineering and ended up here in a university institution. But I'm always curious how we ended up getting to where we are right now. So if you could just share that a little bit more into the personal side of things.
When I had my degree, I was looking for a job, and then I was also applying for jobs in environmental side more. But I also saw the opportunity to work at BestMix, so I'm already working from the beginning at BestMix Software, and I don't know, just the even after the first conversation, I had something. Ooh, IT. I like this. I didn't know what the virtual server was in the beginning, so it was like, what's this? But what I like about IT is that it's a kind of combination, and then maybe the engineering background comes into the place where you still engineer and you make something, but we do it for the nutrition industry. So for me, the bio degree and the engineering was also completed in a certain way. But it's like making software for nutrition industry. I talk a lot with also food producing companies, with pet food, with feed. Pet food is a bit my baby in the industry. That's
I can
something where
tell. I
I,
can
I
tell.
do talk a lot. Yeah. So for me, it's an ideal combo. It's still engineering, but in nutrition. So I think it's somehow two loves that come together and was a perfect hit or a perfect match from the beginning. And then when the sustainability goals more and more got attention also in the industries, I was like, oh, nice. Now the third one is also being added. So yeah.
Wow, no, no, very interesting. It's always on that, and I, like I said, I could tell that pet food is a little bit your baby, but and which is great. I mean, it's a very interesting area. When at the end of the day, we're making animal food, either for a cow or a
Yeah,
pig or a chicken
of
or
course.
or a
Mhm.
pet, and of course, pets being and some of us, and I include myself, we treat our animals, our pets as our own part of our family. And I have a personal joke that I said that who's the boss of the house, and I will say the dog, and then my wife will say it's me. And then I said, and then it's the dog. But we there's always the trends, and in our case, we had to change diet because of allergies and things like that. So I could see that your background definitely brings innovation to the industry. So. What are the key things that you see on the nutrition side on the pet food, at least from your perspective, that are evolving more on the innovation side? We could talk about ingredients, we could talk about processing, consumer trends in general.
In the beginning, for me, pet food was a sector which was a bit more related to the feed industry because they still had opportunities in formulating and optimizing their diets. But then humanization happened in the pet food industry. So, what I notice is that a lot of extra claims, and around these claims, there's a lot of legislation, so there's less freedom in optimizing those diets. So it's more almost like a marketing game. You more have also brand companies that are starting up and that then are being that they produce their feed via private label producers, for example. So that's a kind of really constellation that happens. So there's like a big trend in humanization and It needs to be certain allergic free or type of trends or claims like that. So that's something that I see changing. But at the same time, also, yeah, the sustainability that has an impact. That's also a big change. And what I sometimes, and especially in the US, I saw this already, that I see these type of pet food companies starting up where it's almost like home baked cookies. So it's like number one humanization example, stuff like that. And that's something that in Europe is less. There's also a trend like that, but when I encounter it, it's most of the time in the US. And then I think, yeah, people do value, almost like you say, the dog or the cat is like a member of your family. So you want to give them homemade dinners or something that I will mix with the ingredients that I have at the fridge. That's also a business model already. Companies that have a website designed really where you can fill in your own ingredients at home, and that it will propose you a certain customized diet. So all these kind of things are trends that pushes companies to go that extra step in delivering, yeah, products more as a service, almost not purely the products in the shelf, but also really a real service model behind it. So yeah, that's also really something which is changing.
I agree, and I have seen it in also in certain Latin American markets, at least in my personal experience. And uh, I've seen stores that you actually go in and you buy raw ingredients,
Yeah,
frozen or or packaged, and you prepare the food for your dog. I mean, they're supposed to have those nutritional trends and things like that, and I understand that. I don't know how accurate that will be, but so you treat your own dog as a human in humanization, like you said. And yes, I don't know how much on that specific the nutrition is the right one, and of course the allergens and all those things. But
yeah,
hey, it's what it is at the end of the day. Is a
yeah,
market trend and how the consumers want it. And because we always say here in our here as you know, that you have worked with some of my colleagues in the past, that we're the animal food and pet food science. That's how the name is changing of our feed science program. And that we always make feed or pet food for the eyes of the owner, not necessarily with the dog or the cat or what. So it's a very interesting industry, and I see that on that sense. And I appreciate your feedback on that, because it's pets is always a very interesting topic. I just came from a doctor's appointment, and while the time I was being there, we talk about dogs.
yeah,
Yeah,
true.
it's also a very always companion animal. So that so well.
Yeah,
I appreciate you joining us today. We're coming kind of like at the end of our time, and of course, I know that you're gonna be continuing participating in some of the activities in the pet food world that are also coming here to Kansas, to Kansas City specifically. And
yeah. I will be speaking at a pet food forum. So if you want to meet me there, I will be there as a presenter.
Absolutely. That'll be great, and we're looking forward for that. We also Kansas State will have a booth there, so if I please stop by too, and hope to see you well, it's almost like at the end of this month too. So,
Yeah,
well,
indeed.
uh, in behalf of the Feed Science Podcast, Lynn, I really appreciate you coming and joining us, and like we said, I hope to see you anytime soon. So for the audience, this is Carlos Campabadal from Kansas State University in behalf of the Feed Science Podcast, and thank you very much for viewing and listening to us.